What I'm going to quickly talk about in this video is how to ace VCE 3-4 methods, even if you failed year 11. Even if you failed year 11 and you think you've tried everything as well. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up a 40 plus study score over the summer in the easiest way possible. Now, just quickly about me, 10-second intro. I've been tutoring VCE methods for the past 6 years. I taught at Monash University for the past 6 years. Here's me winning my teaching award in 2022. And there was another photo, but that is perfectly fine. Here's my other photo of just me teaching at uni. I forgot it was on the first slide. So you didn't do that well in year 11. Maybe you did do well in year 11 and you just feel like you need to improve more to do well in year 12. Because in year 11, you get into a false sense of security because the SACs are relatively easy. The SACs are almost like topic tests, they're just revision. But in year 3-4 methods or VCE 3-4 methods, everything in terms of all the assessments are very, very difficult. And it's not just to scare you, that's just the way it is because the assessments are more so modeling tasks and investigation tasks, and they combine many, many topics together. So for example, in SAC 1, you're combining all the topics from chapter 1 to chapter 10. For your second SAC, you're combining all of the topics from chapter 1 to chapter 11. And for this third topic, you're doing probability, but it takes everything from before that to actually build up that knowledge. And you didn't do that well in year 11, or you did well in year 11, and you tried everything that you thought was possible. So this is what most likely you did to study productively, quote unquote. You kept up to date with the classwork, you completed all of the textbook exercises, you completed all of the chapter reviews, and you completed some past SACs from your school as well. And you still notice that you didn't do that well, or you still feel as if you need to improve to do well in year 12 and secure that 40 study score. And you still weren't close to happy with how you went. Now, I actually experienced this personally as well during year 11 and pushing through to year 12. And I've also spoken to hundreds of my students over the past 6 years who have fallen into the same trap. And the same probably goes for you as well. So what your problem most likely is that you've perfected the theory, but you have not perfected the applications yet. And honestly, this is arguably the worst problem to have in VCE. And it sounds kind of weird, right? Because you know the theory, but you don't know the application. But the reason why it's the worst problem possible is because you're wasting a ton of time preparing for your assessment, but you're just gaining false hope without the results. So you're just putting in work and more work, and you're really refining the theory, but you notice that your SACs aren't actually improving. So you know that you have to do something different, but you just don't know exactly what to do. Now, this is, you might think that this is just a trap or something that you cannot break out of, and it's too late in the year to do so. And from my experience and from my students' experiences as well, it's never actually too late to implement 3 to 5 basic steps to help take your current knowledge and turn it into knowledge that will actually advance your SAC scores and your end of year exam scores at the end of the year. So what our goal is from the summer onwards and from this point onwards is to convert all of your knowledge right now into usable knowledge into SACs. Right now, your knowledge that you have so far is at a subsistent level, but it's not at the level that you need, and it's not in the right kind of context that you need to actually do well in SACs and do well on exams. That's my job in this video, to teach you how to exactly do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down step by step the exact process that you can implement over the summer to go backwards and ensure a strong foundation of year 11 over the summer, learn how to ace all 3 SACs before anyone else, and perfect the exam skills that you need to separate yourself from the rest. Now, just before we go through this, don't forget why you actually need to succeed in VCE. Your knowledge and skills when sitting SACs is the cornerstone of everything before your high school life. It sounds like a big deal, and to be honest, it is, because it's just setting up the foundation for everything else after this. So if you understand the theory and how to apply that to application skills in a SAC and exam context, then that will result in a higher SAC and exam score. That would then result in a higher ATAR, that would get you into your dream uni course, that would get you into your dream career, and that would lead on to having your dream life. So this is the cornerstone of everything above. So why wouldn't we want to convert the theory into application questions? It sounds like such a minute task, but it has a long impact and a bigger impact at the end of the day. Now, this is what my students do, and this is what my students have done specifically over summer to brace and prepare for a 40 plus study score. And to do this, I'm just going to illustrate this with a quick analogy. You can absolutely score high on SACs without being naturally smart. It's just about being smart with how you prepare, not necessarily naturally smart with maths. So let's take the analogy of running a marathon, which is a 40K run. How should you specifically prepare for that run? let's go through a couple of different examples. So this is method A. Learning about your foot placement individually when you're running, that spends about 20% of your time, or you dedicate about 20% of your time to that. Learning about the arm swinging timing individually, you take 20% of your time learning that. You're learning about running posture individually, you take 20% of your time learning that. Figuring out what shoes to wear that suit you, figuring out that with 20% of your time, and then practicing your 5K, 10K, 20K, 40K running skills, combining everything together, which is 20% of your time. So that's one way of preparing for the marathon. And you might see some things that are good about that. You might see some things that are not so good about that. Method 2B is just practicing everything together. So just practicing your running, you're not really dedicating your time to anything specifically. That's just doing everything all at once. So that you can see some problems with that as well. Now, what I do for my students is we take a holistic approach. So the individual skills from method A are still important, but they should not be relied upon for perfection. And the same thing with VCE methods. We'll apply this analogy in VCE methods later in this video, but what we need to do is consider what an optimal preparation would be for running a marathon, and then convert that into how to actually prepare for stuff in VCE methods. So this is how I would split up my time. Figuring out what shoes to wear, that's just 5% of your time. Foot placement, 5% of your time. Arm swinging, 5% of your time. Running posture, 5% of your time. Practicing everything together, that's a highly more significant amount of time when you're actually preparing for a marathon. You care about the smaller individual things to a little extent, but more of your time, a significant amount more of your time, should be dedicated towards practicing everything together. And then what you need to spend a lot of your time doing is figuring out what you're doing correct and what you're doing incorrectly, and refine what you're doing incorrectly. And then just keep on repeating this process until your brain hurts, or for a reasonable amount of time. So what you need to be doing is incorporating a iterative approach. So this ideal method is what we call iterative. You go back and you realize what you need to fix, and you fix it. So this is exactly what this iterative approach is. You have to figure out what you're doing wrong, you fix it, you test it, and then you go back to the start and you keep checking what you know and what you don't know. Again, exactly the same approach with VCE methods. You need to be going through everything, and you need to be analyzing what you're doing at every step, to figuring out what you know, figuring out what you don't know, and then fixing what you don't know in order to fix that for next time, for before when you're sitting in a SAC, before when you're sitting in an exam, before when you're sitting a topic test. Whatever it is, you're fixing everything as you're going. It sounds simple, right? Because it is simple. Just a lot of students don't think about and evaluate their progress as they're going, which is something that I really emphasize with my students through regular topic tests and through regular question banks that I send to them as well. So here are the actual steps. Here are the 5 steps that you're probably waiting for in this video. How do we apply the above principles? How do we apply that iterative process to improve in VCE methods right now over the summer? So this is what my students do. This is the 5 steps that I teach them. The first thing that they do is they go through the textbook and they understand everything. They go through and they pick it apart in meticulous detail. And then just to make sure that they've done everything well, as they're going through the textbook, they summarize everything by writing notes using the Cornell method. It's just a way of writing notes. I'll make a separate video regarding that. But the Cornell method, you can look it up. That's exactly how they structure their notes to make sure that they've understood everything in the best way possible. Step 2 is that they understand everything, or they learn everything with a great understanding through an expert source. So what my students use is they use all of my topic videos and my SAC question walkthroughs that I made over the past 3 years. I have a bunch of them. I give out some for free on my free school community as well. So have a look at them, see how I actually structure that content. And that's exactly how I present it to my students for all the topics in the year. Step 3 that they implement is that they consolidate their knowledge through questions, and plenty of them. So my students get a workbook mailed to them with questions varying from basic to expert, SAC, and exam style questions. So there's a bunch of questions that they practice, not too many though, because I limit the questions to everything that they need to know, no more and no less. And all those nuanced ideas that you might pick up on SACs and exams, that's what I base my questions on. So I make sure that there's all those 1% types of things that I include in my questions, just to make sure that they cover everything in explicit detail. The first bonus thing that they get to actually help them prepare for SACs specifically is that they reconsolidate the knowledge at the end of each chapter using extra questions that I make to build on the previous knowledge again and again. Because as you've probably noticed, as you've started Head Start or you're starting VCE methods right now, is that everything is built on the previous topics. So for example, polynomials is built on everything before. Transformations is built on all the functions that you know from before. Differentiation is built on all the functions that you've learned before that as well. Everything is a build on the previous topic. So that's why it's really important to consolidate and reconsolidate your knowledge again and again and keep on testing those previous topics. And that's what my students get through these extra questions. And that's what you should be focusing yourself on as well. You need to be able to get these questions that combine individual topics together. And then the second bonus thing that they get is that they reconsolidate their knowledge again through 2 topic tests that they get through each week. One is tech free and one is tech access. That's just to make sure that they're actually being able to answer these questions in a SAC and timed specific context. So it's just specifically for that. They get those 2 time tests per week, and you need to be testing yourself in a similar sort of manner as well. So if you're interested in that process, you can feel free to message me if you want to understand more. But more specifically, I have a booking system linked in the description so we can break down what you're aiming to achieve for VCE Methods specifically this year. So if you're just aiming for a 35 raw, if you're aiming for a 45 raw, if you're aiming for a 45 raw, whatever your goal is, we can break down how exactly you need to get there. And I can break down exactly how I will help you get there. So I'll see you there in the call.